And welcome everyone to TJ Michaels Takes on the World, episode 2. I am TJ Michaels. Granite capital of the world, Barrie, Vermont, is where you find me. Kind of a red state insurgent trapped in blue state America. And here is where we talk about things that matter. No sugarcoating, no political correctness, just real talk about God, family, country, culture, and freedom, because it's what we're needing these days. In this show, we are diving deep into the issues facing America today, from the front lines of faith to the battles in the streets, and we're going to tackle it all. So, if you're trying to find some sanity in this crazy world, you kind of have come to the right place. Like and subscribe, share this live stream, and join the conversation on Facebook and YouTube at TJ Michaels Takes on the World. Now, I know this isn't your average podcast. I'm not your average host. I'm not here to coddle feelings or avoid the tough conversations. If you're tired of the same old spin and looking for something different, something real, then buckle up, because we're about to take on the world head first. But before we do that, we start off every show by taking on the word. Fellow Americans this week in California, loss that is really indiscriminate, rich, poor, affected greatly. The word tonight comes from the Gospel of John, 16:33. I have said these things to you, that in me may you have peace. In the world you will have tribulation, but take heart, I have overcome the world. And when we look at that, Christ's words recorded here are among kind of the most cherished among the Gospel of John. It's a statement that combines teaching, remembrance, warning, and encouragement. And becoming a Christian doesn't guarantee an easy life. In fact, Jesus made it clear that following him can lead to persecution. Also in the book of John, know that Christ has already obtained the ultimate victory, though, and nothing in this world can undo that. You'll find that in Romans. Christ made it really kind of clear in advance that hard times will come. And that's what we're dealing with in California this week, and it continues. And by the way, the peace that Jesus speaks of is not of worldly comfort or even happiness. It's confident rest. Believers experience when they set aside anxiety and trust God to work out his will. Our thoughts and prayers are with all of the people in Southern California and the Los Angeles area tonight, as they continue to battle terrible, terrible things. Focus on the family tonight, where we break down the stories that matter to you and to your family with a little clarity, a little humor, and hopefully a lot of common sense. And today we're digging into a courtroom drama that has played out over the past couple of days. Yes, it involves Title IX and, the First Amendment. And believe it or not, locker rooms. And trust me, it's worth sticking around for this. Title IX, the thing that made sure we got equal funding for women's sports. Well, what happened? The Department of Education recently tried to rewrite Title IX to expand the definition of Title IX on the basis of sex to include gender identity. And what does this mean? It means it would have allowed men to access women's spaces, locker rooms, showers, even sex ed classes if their gender identity matched. And as you can imagine, didn't sit well with a lot of people. Like the plaintiffs in this case, 5 states, including Kentucky, Virginia, Indiana, Tennessee, West Virginia, they took it to court saying, hey, wait a minute. Uh, this was, hey, let's strengthen women's sports law, right? This is hey, let's make sure there's women's sports for women. That's what Title IX was meant to do. And they were basically like, well, we're here to defend showers and sanity. I mean, some things do still kind of make sense, right? Guess what? The United States District Court Judge Danny Reeves agreed. He struck down the DOE's rewrite on several grounds, calling it unconstitutional, arbitrary, and a little nonsensical. In his ruling, Judge Reeves said the rewrite just didn't bend the rules of Title IX. It completely turned them on their head. And he also had a lot to say about the First Amendment. The new rules would have required teachers and administrators to use preferred pronouns and names or risk being accused of harassment, believe it or not. Yeah, it's not going there. So for you and your family, these are the kinds of things that progressive left have been up to during the Biden administration. If someone slipped up and said the wrong name or pronoun, they'd be written up, kind of like the Pronoun Police Academy or something like that. I don't know. Judge Reeves pointed out that this compelled speech, clear violation of the First Amendment. He wrote that the government can't force people to affirm beliefs they disagree with, and they definitely can't chill speech by making folks afraid to say the wrong thing. So here's the kicker. The DOE even admitted that pronouns carry a powerful message. And once hearing that, Judge Reeves fired back saying, that's why you really can't force people to say it. Right? And it's a good point. Let's be honest. No one wants to get into a shouting match over pronouns in a middle school hallway. Okay, your kids are already tough enough to handle. But the real heart of the matter is privacy and fairness. And the plaintiffs argued that the judge agreed that this rewrite undermined the entire purpose of Title IX. Title IX was designed to create opportunities for women, not blur the lines so much that their spaces are no longer theirs. Former NCAA athlete Riley Gaines, who's been vocal advocate for keeping men out of women's sports, called the decision a huge win for girls this week and women everywhere. And honestly, I think a lot of parents out there are kind of breathing a sigh of relief. My kids, 3 of them, all out of school. Thank God, right? Because when your daughter joins the swim team, you're signing her up for backstrokes, not debates over locker room policies, right? And that's where Tennessee Attorney General Jonathan Skrmetti gets in. Good-looking guy. See him there? Yeah. Also weighed in, calling this a victory for both privacy and freedom of speech. And he summed it up perfectly, saying, the First Amendment doesn't allow the government to chill speech, or in this case, just make it so awkward that people just stop talking altogether. So I got to say, this ruling is like a win for common sense. And honestly, it's kind of a good reminder that words do matter, but so does context. And maybe a little decency, right? At the end of the day, a case was really kind of about standing up for fairness, privacy, and freedom. 3 things every family values. So parents, here's your takeaway. Stay informed, stay engaged, and speak up for what makes sense for you and your family. Maybe keep an eye on the court cases too, because sometimes they're deciding things that hit a little too close to home or the locker room. Before we focus on country tonight in our America First segment, our thoughts are and prayers, and yes, even help and donations going to hundreds of thousands of our fellow Americans dealing with the California wildfires. And it's just horrific. I recommend the Salvation Army. You can make a donation at salvationarmyusa.org. The Army has mobilized and is sending disaster relief personnel from all over the country to California. They have done so this week to aid in the tragedy, even though in many places in Southern California, they are dealing with their own loss. That's a Salvation Army building there that is burned to the ground in the fire. And so all of our prayers are not, however, going to keep us from the truth tonight, because we really are unafraid to have difficult conversations. It's one thing this country has been missing for a while. And the difficult conversation regarding the wildfires that have ravaged California, well, they're not accidents. And I'm going to tell you tonight why this ravaging catastrophe is the direct result of a Green New Deal, socialist, Marxist, big government utopia that they have been attempting to create in California for decades. And it's on full display this week, with admittedly a lot of sadness, loss, and yes, even a lot of people who have lost their lives. And it is the textbook for failed progressive government and failed progressive government policy. And it should make you understand the absolute bullet that we dodged this past November. Where do we even start? How about the direct result of decades of mismanagement by California's political elite? Let's call it what it is. It's negligence wrapped up in progressive virtue signaling. Wildfires are not new. It's not a new phenomenon. The Santa Ana winds are not new. They are not a new phenomenon. The winds have been blowing since California was California, and even before that. You see, God's creation, nature is cyclical. And if you live in a part of the country right now where there's snow, you do understand that 65,000 years ago it was a rainforest, right? The earth goes through patterns. And fires have had a role in our ecosystems, and California specifically's ecosystems, since the beginning of time. But when human failure meets this nature cycle, the results are catastrophic. The politicians in Sacramento and Los Angeles have really turned a blind eye to basic infrastructure and fire mitigation. Instead, they've been busy worshiping at the altar of their new religion, climate change. Now, don't get me wrong. And we get pinned with this all the time. Oh, you conservatives. You just want dirty air and dirty water, and yeah, that's what we want. Do you know anybody that wants dirty air or dirty water? Or stewardship of the earth is important. But the problem is when you turn climate change from a science into an ideology and government into your God, bad things are going to happen. They always do. You know, for years, politicians poured billions of dollars into so-called green initiatives, while really ignoring what really keeps people safe. Clearing dead brush, updating the power grids, maintaining the fire breaks. No, all of that is anti-environmental. And that's why they didn't do it. And that's why California is where it is today. Those things aren't trendy enough. They're not woke enough. What's trendy in California? Politics, diversity, equity, inclusion. Yeah, DEI. Those three little letters that have become the trinity, really, of the left. They've shifted resources to hire equity officers, not firefighters. They prioritized safe spaces on college campuses while ignoring the need for safety in the forest. Let me just ask you, California, how about funding controlled burns instead of unconscious bias training for state employees? I mean, wouldn't that be a novel idea? And here's the kicker. While they lectured the rest of us on our carbon footprints, they can't even keep the power on during a heat wave. California's electric grid, a crumbling mess. That's what it is. And it's been a major cause of wildfires. Remember the Paradise Fire? Sparked by a faulty power line? PG&E, the state utility company, drowning in debt now and lawsuits. But what does Sacramento do? They regulate companies to death and then bail them out when they fail. And where does that money come from? Yeah, well, I mean, it does come from hardworking California families. The number one taxed state, most expensive state to live in the entire US of A. And they can't keep water in the hydrants. They can't keep the power on during the summer. And they can't protect their people from things like this. They're starting to catch on. But it's not just the hardworking families of California who are already struggling in this economy to put gas in their car and food on their tables. That the politicians demonize for driving a pickup truck and not a Prius, you know. It's the rest of America. Because we're going to have to bail them out. $70 billion, some estimates, to rebuild. Because you weren't prepared? Because you wanted to virtue signal your government and ignore public safety? What is the number one responsibility of government? Public safety, right? No, DEI, environmental climate change, hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars spent by California on those problems. And that doesn't even get to the human cost of all of this. You sit and you think that thousands of people have lost their homes. Entire communities are gone. And who bears the brunt? It's not the elites living in the gated mansions in Beverly Hills. Sure, they lost a multi-million-dollar home, but they've got the resources to figure it out. No, it's the blue-collar workers, the farmers, the middle class, the families who can't afford to rebuild. And they're left with nothing. While politicians shrug their shoulders and issue press releases about the climate crisis. Here's a crisis that they don't want to talk about: California's refusal to take responsibility. Gavin Newsom, instead of pointing fingers at failed policies, like global warming, as if carbon emissions alone caused their negligence. Listen, climate change didn't stop you from clearing the dead trees and doing forest management and getting rid of all the fuel in the forest, which they did for decade after decade after decade, until California became a one party progressive state. And then it all stopped because it was anti environmental. And now those forests are filled with fuel, and we get what we get. Climate change didn't stop the folks in California from upgrading their infrastructure either. That was a choice. And then we get to all of the things that you've heard this week. Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass cut $17 million from the fire department budget and wanted $50 million more. $17 million from the people who are supposed to protect the lives and the property. And then, as the Santa Ana winds picked up and the wildfire reached critical levels, she left the state to attend an inauguration of a president in Ghana. A guy she'd never even met before. Meanwhile, back home, firefighters are running out of water. Entire neighborhoods are burning to the ground because hydrants are dry. Why? State environmental regulations. Yeah, I wanted to protect the rare smelt fish. Okay? I don't know. I think I got a picture of it here somewhere. Let me see. Do we have a picture of it? Oh, this is good. The smelt fish. The fish. Yeah. Is that it? Right there? Yeah. That's a smelt fish. It's the size of a minnow. Yeah, they prioritized a fish the size of a minnow over human lives. It's disgusting. And thousands of homes. So, TJ, you've told me all about the problems. What is the answer? And the answer is leadership. We need leadership that prioritizes practical solutions over political theater. We need to focus on controlled burns. Piano Shape Object watching tonight writes, we will be paying for this in higher insurance rates, lower availability, raising prices for building materials, and real estate costs. And you're right about that. You know, in Vermont, we have a thing called Act 250, which is just about the only other law in the country that is more stringent than Vermont's Act 250 is probably California's zoning law. They tell you if you're a commercial business and you're building a building, how big the lot has to be, how much sidewalk you need, how many trees you need on the property, what kind of trees they need to be. It's unbelievable. And now you look at 20,000 homes burned or 12,000 homes burned. It'll be decades before the Pacific coastline comes back. So, yeah, we need leadership that prioritizes on practical solutions. Let's focus on controlled burns, monitorizing power grids, and cleaning up our forests. Second, let's stop spending taxpayer dollars on programs that don't move the needle. Californians deserve better than virtue signaling. They need action. And lastly, we need to return to our roots as a nation and stop treating government as a savior. You can ask the people in Hawaii and North Carolina about that. Because you end up with a bureaucracy that can't see the forest for the trees, or in this case, the fire. California's wildfires are not just a natural disaster, they are a political disaster. And until the people of California demand accountability, it'll all just continue. Now, the good news is change is always possible, but it starts with calling out the truth. And that's exactly what we will keep doing here. And again, our deepest sympathies, our prayers to the people of California. But you can't keep doing this every year. We can't keep having FEMA bail them out. There was zero preparation. Piano shaped object, the families of at least 24 that have died so far. And, well, at least they can rest well knowing that the smelt fish is safe. Thanks, piano shaped object. That's true. As sick as it sounds, it's pretty dead on. But that's our America First segment tonight on the show. The segment where we take the pulse of our ever-changing culture, call out the craziness, and occasionally celebrate when the winds have blown in the right direction. Today, we're talking about something that's got folks scratching their heads and some of us chuckling with a big ol' I told you so. And that's right. It's all about Meta tonight. Now, it's been a bizarre week. The company formerly known as Facebook and Instagram has hit the brakes on the woke-mobile this week. And Mark Zuckerberg took a sharp U-turn. First up, he got rid of all the fact checkers. You remember the fact checkers, right? Shadowy, all-knowing guardians of online truth, right? Who decided what you could and couldn't say on the internet. Well, Meta has given them the pink slip. The fact checkers have been shown the door, and if you're wondering whether they got a community note on their way out, well, that's just the poetic justice of all of it. Zuck saying, "I'm going to adopt a community note-based system like X." So now, instead of the heavy hand of censorship, Meta is embracing something called community notes. And community notes is the crowdsourcing fact-checking like Yelp for truth-telling, basically. Users can now add context to posts that might be, let's say, a little factually challenged. And honestly, it does have the potential to be comedy gold. I mean, Imagine someone posting a picture of Bigfoot and the community chimes in. Actually, that's Gary from accounting in a gorilla suit. It's going to be wild, you know. But let's not forget this same company kind of spent years muzzling opinions it didn't like under the guise of protecting all of us from misinformation. Misinformation is just code for information that we don't like or information that doesn't agree with us. What changed? Well, maybe Mark Zuckerberg finally realized that no amount of DEI seminars or fact checking initiatives were going to make Aunt Karen stop sharing her world famous crockpot recipes alongside conspiracy theories about Elvis still being alive, right? And speaking of DEI, Meta has hit the delete button on its diversity, equity, and inclusion programs this week as well. That's right. They've packed up the safe spaces at Facebook, turned off the woke PowerPoints, and said goodbye to the professional unconscious bias trainers. And you can almost hear the collective gasp from HR departments around the country. Now, I'm sure some people are devastated, but Zuck wasn't done. This week, he also sent a directive to the Facebook office in New York to remove the tampon machines in the men's restroom. I'm guessing our former vice presidential candidate not real happy about all of that. Somewhere out there is a professional DEI consultant in a Starbucks nursing a $12 oat milk latte, and they're wondering how they're going to pay for their life now and their subscription to the Atlantic. But let's be real. Meta is not doing this out of the goodness of their heart, or because they suddenly started watching conservative viewpoints and going, hey, I agree. Now, I will give you that Mark Zuckerberg did say that when Donald Trump took the bullet, it was the most badass thing that he had ever seen. I will give you that Mark has been hanging out with Dana White at the UFC. And he said that in doing so and hanging around real guys, he started to realize what kind of war there is on masculinity. And so, is his viewpoint slightly changing? Maybe. But he's also a capitalist. And he's getting based because it's politically expedient for him right now in his company, and that's how you make money. It does turn out, though, that when you're hemorrhaging billions of dollars trying to create the metaverse, which, by the way, still looks like a bad video game from 2003, you can't afford to pay people to sit in a room and talk about microaggressions. Reality kind of bites that way. And let's not forget the changes that play into the broader culture war. Meta's sudden pivot is a signal that even the tech giants are starting to realize, hey, you know what? We may have overplayed our hand here. Because the average American doesn't want to be lectured every time they scroll through pictures of their cousin's wedding or their buddy's new bass boat. People just want to live their lives without being told that they're part of the problem. Now, you can think that Meta has completely turned over a new leaf. I would tell you to not get ahead of yourself. It's the same company that collects enough data on you to know that exactly what you're going to eat for lunch tomorrow before you do. But you know what? I guess we can take the win where we can get it. The takeaway, for starters, it's a reminder that culture shifts aren't just top down. When people say enough is enough, Even the biggest corporations have to pay attention. And that's just what's happened. And if you ever feel like your voice doesn't matter, remember, someone out there, a fact checker, is somewhere out there, there's a fact checker polishing their resume because of the culture tide turning in the favor of common sense. And that's our spotlight on culture tonight. The Freedom Files tonight. This week has been wild. As we move closer to January 20th, Panama, Greenland, Canada, and something called the Gulf of America. It has been one wild week for the president elect, and it has liberal heads exploding, all while not understanding fundamentally something about 47. He is playing chess this week with the left and the left wing while they're still stuck on checkers. Why do you say that? What is the deal with Panama and Greenland and Canada and the Gulf of America? I saw 100,000 posts this week. What an idiot. They're not seeing the bigger picture. Donald Trump isn't just throwing out random comments. He's setting the table. He's setting the stage for some epic negotiations. Look, Donald Trump knows that Canada isn't going to become the 51st state. Donald Trump knows that we're not going to buy Greenland. About the only thing that he is serious about is maybe the Panama Canal, but we'll get to that. We'll get to the negotiations here and break them down. The Canada situation, let's start there. Trump has been talking about Canada like it's that friend who borrowed your lawnmower 5 years ago and still hasn't returned it. He says Canada isn't as friendly as everyone thinks. Now, the left is losing their mind, clutching their pearls, saying, oh my goodness, what's he doing? Is he starting a trade war? Let's be honest here. Trump's not starting a war. He's doing what Trump does. He's sending a message. He's setting the table. You see, while the left is out there losing their lids, Trump's thinking, I'm going to have to negotiate with these folks. Let's shake the tree a little bit, see what falls out. By calling out Canada, he's making sure that when the negotiations do come around, there is instantly a better deal on the table. Trust me when I tell you, it's not about offending anyone in Canada or our neighbors to the north. It's about getting a better deal for the American people. A more balanced trade deal, which no president in the history of our country has ever worried about. And yet, Donald Trump, when he says America first, he means it. It is classic Trump. Stir the pot a little and then watch the deals get a little bit sweeter. Greenland and the real estate deal. So this week, Trump floats the idea of buying Greenland. And once again, the left explodes. What's next? Buying the moon? First of all, this is Donald Trump we're talking about. The man, whether you want to like it or not, wrote a book called The Art of the Deal. He is an expert negotiator. He just doesn't toss around crazy ideas to make you think he's crazy. He tosses around ideas to get people talking. And he thinks big. Now, I'm no expert on international land deals, but if we think about Greenland for a second, it is strategically located. It actually is a very, very, very important piece of land for our military. And many senators and congressmen this week have said as such. But he knows that if you throw out a wild idea, like, say, buying a massive chunk of land that could be worth billions, suddenly every country involved is going to come running to the table. Maybe it's not about buying Greenland, but about securing a better deal on Arctic resources or a military position or a base or two. Either way, it's a power move. But it's just so easy for the left to go, oh, what a maroon. Finally, the Panama Canal. And Trump is suggesting that it might be time for the American to get more involved in the operation of the major trade route. The most strategic position on the globe. Left-wing heads are spinning, calling him a colonialist now, and that he's out of touch. Let me ask you this. What's better than having a conservative businessman in charge of a project that's been underperforming for decades? You can't say he doesn't know how to get things done. Because one fake hoax after another in his first administration, with both hands tied behind his back and the deep state down, breathing down his neck, and impeachment after impeachment, he did more than in his first administration than four presidents together. He sees a problem and he sees an opportunity. Now, I'm not going to say that Trump's going to roll in with a bulldozer and start taking control, but if you can negotiate a better deal for the U.S., Trump's going to try. Manifest Destiny is coming back in style from Piano Shaped Object. Thanks, buddy. He's going to try. And let's be real here. No one's going to be talking about the Panama Canal unless it's under Trump's watch. And what you don't know is that, yes, Chinese companies are now running the first and last lock on the Panama Canal, the most strategic piece of land on the globe that we paid for, that we built, that Jimmy Carter sold to Panama for $1 in the 70s. Should have never done that. And now companies, and I use that term loosely because in China there is no such thing as a company. There's the Chinese Communist Party. That's the company. And all it takes is for them to say, don't let any U.S. ships in there. And what you don't know is right now China is currently charging freight coming through the Panama Canal twice what it's charging the other ships coming through the Panama Canal. We built it. We paid for it. I think we need it back. Or at least not have China in control of it. Trump's raising the stakes. With Panama, with China. So when the negotiation starts, the U.S. comes out on top. Finally, the Gulf of Mexico. Trump's going to rename it the Gulf of America. It does kind of have a nice ring. He's made some comments about it being an American responsibility again. And, well, the Gulf of America also ties back to the Panama Canal and also to Mexico and our border battles. He's not looking for a fight. He's looking for leverage. However, I did have this one thought this week, and that is the Biden administration on its exit through executive order made all kinds of offshore drilling illegal. And of course, Trump's pledge in the campaign has been drill, baby, drill. Biden says that his executive order, the way that it's written, cannot be undone by another executive order, which I highly doubt. However, is it Trump playing chess again? Because it may be illegal to offshore drill in the Gulf of Mexico by order of President Joe Biden. But would it be illegal to offshore drill in the Gulf of America? He's reminding everyone that the U.S. has power in these regions. He's not threatening war. He's flexing his negotiating muscles, and Trump's the kind of guy who'll make you think he's going to blow up the deal just so that when the real conversation happens, you're begging him to make it happen. So, to all of those left-wing heads exploding over Trump's comments this past week, he lives rent-free in your head. Take a deep breath. He's not about chaos. He's about strategy. Every tweet, every remark, part of a grand negotiation plan. And while the left is out there losing their minds, Trump's already thinking 3 steps ahead. And when it's time to sit down and hammer out the deals, guess who's going to have the upper hand? 47. The art of the deal is just getting started. And if you thought this week was crazy, wait till the negotiations actually begin. That is going to put a wrap on it tonight. We've covered a lot today, from God and family to country to culture and freedom. And let's be honest, I probably was not received well by everyone. Maybe stirred up some feelings. That's exactly what I wanted to do. Because the show is about truth and honesty and maybe a little bit of common sense and bringing that back to the conversation. And about understanding that we can't just yell and scream at each other anymore. And we've got to be able to have hard discussions. It's what's been lacking for about 4 years. So I want to thank you for joining me tonight, whether you agree with what I said or you're out there shaking your head. I would enjoy hearing from you. The discussion is just getting started, and I'm ready to take on whatever's next on next week's episode, 1 week at a time. But if you want to continue the discussion on YouTube or Facebook or Rumble, you'll find us at TJ Michaels Takes on the World. Thanks for watching. Good night.